Welcome to Drive the Daf, clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Beitzah Daf contains a number of distinct sugyas. First, the Gemara has two comments wrapping up previous sugyas. Then the Gemara gets into the discussion of somebody slaughters a chicken, opens it up, and finds eggs inside. When are they considered to be eggs, and when are they considered to be part of the chicken because they're not completely detached from the chicken? From there, the Gemara goes into the subject of when chickens lay eggs. Do they lay eggs during the day or during the night? And what the difference is halachically, which one it is. Then the Gemara refers back to the Mishnah, and the Gemara discusses the next phrase in the Mishnah, Machlokes Beis Hillel Beis Shammai, as to what is the shear, the size, the minimum size of chametz. The Gemara will discuss whether that is referring to eating chametz or it's referring to destroying chametz, what's it about, and then we'll get to the next phrase in the Mishnah, which discusses if you're allowed to shecht on Yom Tov when you do not have any dirt to cover the blood, if you're shechting one of the animals which requires blood covering, that is birds and chaya, wild animals. So first, let's begin. The Gemara is bringing another example of a case where somebody wanted to buy eggs, and he got the wrong eggs, and he went to Rabbi Ami, and he said that it was a mekach. So here, the situation is that there was somebody walking around, and he was saying he wants to buy eggs of a male. Now, Gemara means as follows: when a hen lays eggs, there's two possible ways that the chicken's body can produce the eggs. One is if the eggs are fertilized by a male, by a rooster, and one is if the eggs are non-fertilized, they're just part of the hen's monthly egg-laying cycle. So when it's fertilized, the Gemara calls it Beitzah Daf. It was exposed to a male, and the eggs are therefore fertilized, and those can hatch. Those can actually produce a chick. You can have another chicken born from those eggs because they're fertilized eggs. When they're not fertilized, they just come out. So the Gemara refers to those as safna da'ara, warmed or hidden by the earth. That is, the Gemara is working with the understanding that the chicken has to have a warming of the body in order to produce eggs. It could be warmed by the presence of the male, which produces hormonal reactions, or it could be warmed just by the chicken's contact with the ground. So these are the two types of eggs: eggs from a male or eggs that are safna da'ara. So this person was walking around and he was saying, who has to sell me eggs of a male? Who has to sell me eggs of a male? And somebody sold him eggs that was warmed by the ground, not exposed to a male. So he was upset. He got the wrong egg. So he went to Rav Ami and he complained. He said, it's a mekach tais. It was a mistake. He sold me something I didn't ask for. Rav Ami said, you're right. And you get it back. You can reverse the sale, get back a full refund. So Gemara says, yeah, obviously, pashut. He didn't get what he asked for. The Gemara says, no, not necessarily. It could be that he wanted eggs that were fertilized because they're fattier. He wanted fattier eggs. Don't assume that just because he said he wants eggs from a male, it means that he wanted eggs that he could hatch, that he could raise into chicks, and these will never hatch, and therefore it's a full-fledged mistake, and he gets to return the eggs. It could just be he wanted fattier eggs. Wanted slightly fattier eggs, he was planning on eating it anyway, then he doesn't get a full refund. He can just get the difference in value between what he wanted and what he got. But he cannot necessarily restore and totally cancel that particular sale. The chiddush here is that no, we do assume that if somebody said he wants eggs from a male, he wanted eggs which can reproduce and hatch a chick. Okay, that finishes that. The Gemara now goes back to our previous discussion where we had said that an egg is considered to be completely formed when it hatches. When it's laid. Until it's laid, the implication is it's not completely formed, and the Gemara is trying to figure out concerning what halacha are you saying that. The Gemara figures it has something to do with the halacha that you're not allowed to eat an egg which was laid on Yom Tov. So that's what we've been discussing up to now. The Gemara wants to know, what are we discussing here? What do we mean to say? So the Gemara here has two opposite versions of the same understanding. The Gemara introduces that it's about a statement of Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan says if an egg is somewhat extruded, it comes out of the chicken partially, if it comes out majority, and then it pops back in. So Rav Yochanan says that egg is considered to be laid. It's considered to be a born egg. Once it's out majority, it's considered to be born. So if that happens on Erev Yom Tov, this is an egg that was laid on Erev Yom Tov, it's fine. You're allowed to eat it, even if it goes back in, and it doesn't actually come out again until on Yom Tov. Now, an egg that's laid on Yom Tov is also, but this is not considered to be an egg laid on Yom Tov because it was majority out before Yom Tov. So there's two versions of what we said here when we said that an egg is considered to be completed when it's laid. Either we meant when it's majority out, and we're saying like Rav Yochanan, that it's considered to be completely separated, fully formed, and therefore it's not muktzah later because it's fully formed already before Yom Tov. Again, we're referring to an egg which was majority laid out of the chicken before Yom Tov. It's considered to be fully formed, and we're saying that it's fully formed before Yom Tov, therefore it's no problem of mukhan, it's already prepared, it's already ready before Yom Tov. And even though it goes back in, it doesn't come out till Yom Tov itself, it's fully formed, and we're agreeing with Rav Yochanan. The other version here is to say we're saying the opposite of Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan said even if it only comes out majority, we're saying no, it has to be fully out in order for it to be considered fully formed, and therefore even if it comes out majority before Yom Tov, it's not considered to be fully formed until it comes fully out. So if it comes out majority before Yom Tov, it's not fully formed. If it goes back in, and it's not until it actually comes out that it's considered fully formed, and if that doesn't happen until Yom Tov, it would be forbidden to eat this egg. Okay, now the Gemara moves on to a discussion as to what is the halacha about when you slaughter a chicken and you find eggs inside. Now the eggs form throughout the cycle of the chicken's egg laying cycle. It forms from small eggs to larger eggs, and then it completes the formation. At some point it has just yolk, then it gets the albumin, the white, then it gets a soft shell, then it gets a hard shell. At some point throughout this process, it is tied to the body of the egg with various tendons and sinews. At some point it gets detached. Gemara wants to know, what is the halacha? When is it considered to be separate? Now, there's a couple of halachas to which it's nageh when it's considered to be separated from the chicken itself. For example, as long as it's still considered to be in the formation stages, it's the flesh of the mother, and it's meat. It's a fleishik egg. You wouldn't be allowed to eat it with milk. So the Gemara quotes this machlokes in full, and it's a machlokes tanaim. What determines when the egg is fully formed so that it is not considered to be meat anymore? It's not considered to be fleishiks. It's not considered to be part of the chicken itself. So the Tanna Kama says it depends when it's fully completely formed. When the egg is fully made and it's ready to go, then it's not considered part of the chicken and it's not fleishik egg anymore. There's a major machlokes Rishonim what's called fully formed. There's about 5 different opinions. The Gemara doesn't get into it here. The Gemara just says the opinion of the Tanna Kama is that it goes by the formation of the egg, not whether it is still connected and held in place by sinews or not. Now Rabbi Yaakov disagrees. Rabbi Yaakov says it goes by whether it's held with sinews or not. It's not relevant how formed it is. It goes by whether it's held with sinews. As long as it's held with sinews, it's considered to be meat. Once it's detached from the flesh, the Gemara explains that the eggs are formed stuck to the spine of the flesh around the spine of the chicken. That's where they're formed. As long as it's held in place by the sinews, it's flesh, it's meat, it's fleishiks. Once it's detached and it's just kind of floating in there ready to come out, then it's eggs and it's parith. So the Gemara quotes 2 versions of a statement by Rav Yosef where he compares this opinion of Rav Yaakov to a different Beitzah. According to one version, the Beitzah is exactly Rav Yaakov. According to the other version, it's against Rav Yaakov. The Beitzah is talking about eating a nivlas of tahar. That is a kosher bird that wasn't slaughtered properly. The halacha of eating a kosher bird that wasn't slaughtered properly is that it's mitame the person who eats it, the clothing of the person who eats it. Now, it's an interesting halacha that it's only matame the clothing. It's not matame him by holding it, by carrying it. Only by eating it is it matame. And it's also only matame if he eats the flesh of the chicken. If he eats anything else which is not edible or not considered flesh of the chicken, does not become tameh by eating it. Now, this, therefore, is also relevant as to whether what he's eating is considered to be flesh of the chicken or not. If what he's eating is chicken flesh, then it's, or whatever bird it happens to be, then it's matame him if it's a nivlas of tahar. If it's not called chicken flesh, then it would not be matame him. So the Beitzah that we're quoting here, that Rav Yosef quotes, brings a number of examples of each one. First, it brings examples of things that are tahar, that are not considered chicken flesh. One of those is something called shalol shel beitzim. Then it brings examples of things which are considered chicken flesh, and it is matame the person who eats it. And one of those is eshkol shel beitzim. Now, the 2 versions of Rav Yosef will be what's a shalol, what's a eshkol, and therefore does this fit with Rav Yaakov or not. So first of all, let's see the Beitzah. The Beitzah says the examples of things that are not considered a chicken flesh, and therefore somebody who eats from a nivlas of tahar does not become tamei, are shalol shel beitzim, a shalol of eggs, bones, sinews, aver min achai, a piece that was cut off while it was alive. All these things are not considered to be eating nivlas of tar, and somebody who eats it is not a tamei. Now, on the other hand, somebody eats eshkol shel beitzim, or he eats the korkavan, that is the muscle that takes the place of the stomach in a bird, or he eats any other intestines, or if he melted the fat of the chicken and drank it. Rashi proves that drinking is also considered to be eating for this halacha. That is considered like he ate the nevela of an oaf tahar, and therefore he is tamei. Now, the first version of Rav Yosef understands that a sholol shel beitzim means exactly what Rav Yaakov was referring to. It means the eggs that are stuck by the gidim, they are stuck by the sinews to the chicken. Rav Yaakov had said that that's considered to be the flesh of the chicken, and therefore if somebody eats it, he should become tamei, and this Beitzah says he does not become tamei, so it's not going like Rav Yaakov. The Eshkol, this version understands, is referring to the spinal flesh, the flesh around the spine itself. Now, Abaye attacks Rav Yosef according to this version, and he says, how do you know that just because Rav Yaakov said it by Isser, that it's, you aren't allowed to eat it with milk because it's considered to be flesh? How do you know that he would say, Le'inyan Hilchos Tumah, that it should also be mitame? Maybe he only said that it's considered to be flesh, you're not allowed to eat it with milk as a gzeira, derabanan, because it's very easy to get confused with eggs at other stages of development, eggs which are attached or not attached, and therefore we ask for everything, we say you're not allowed to eat it with milk. But maybe tumah you don't make gzeira. And if you ask me why do you make gzeira for tumah also, tumah's also, it's just easy to get confused, le'inyan and tumah, you should make gzeira that it's matame, even though it's not. So Gemara says on that, we don't make gzeiras. You don't want more tumah flying around. It's called afushay tumah mifashin, and we do not have more tumah than we need to have, because when there's a lot of tumah around, you end up being matame, things which need to be tar, you're matame truma, you're matame kachim. It's not hard to understand that the Rabbanan did not want to make an extra tumah gzeira, but they did make an extra iser gzeira. That's the first version. Now the second version says the opposite, that Rav Yosef understood that when it says eshkol, which is the flesh on the spine, that was referring to the eggs that are stuck to the eshkol, and Rav Yosef was saying that's what Rav Yaakov was referring to. And this Beitzah therefore is exactly like Rav Yaakov, because it says that somebody who eats that is tamei, and it is considered flesh, just like Rav Yaakov said. On that, the Gemara said that Abaye said, how do you know? Abaye again attacked him, and he said, how do you know that when it says eshkol, it's referring to the eggs stuck to the eshkol flesh? Maybe it's referring to the eshkol flesh itself. And if you ask me, well, what's a chiddush that that's tahar, that's tamei, that's considered chicken flesh? Of course it is, the same as every other flesh. So I'll ask you, why does it mention the stomach? Why does it mention the innards? Why does it mention all these things? The reason is because some people don't eat it, and you may think that some people don't eat it, it won't be considered flesh. The chiddush therefore is that all these things some people do eat, and therefore they are considered to be chicken flesh. Okay, now the Gemara quotes a Beitzah, and the Gemara is going to want to know, what does this have to do with halacha? The Beitzah says that anything which is awake, which is alive, that we use during the day, gives birth during the day. Anything which is awake and alive at night gives birth at night. Anything which is awake and alive both by night and by day gives birth both by night and by day. What are the examples of this? A chicken is used during the day, gives birth only during the day. You will not find a chicken lay an egg at night. A bat, that's a night nocturnal creature, it will only give birth at night, never during the day. A human or something like human, he's around night and day, and therefore he can give birth night and day. Now the Gemara says, who cares? Why is this halacha important? The Gemara says, simple. If you check a chicken's nest, a chicken's coop, and you find that there are no eggs there, and you check it right, Beinish much as the beginning of Yom Tov, you know there's no eggs at the beginning of Yom Tov, even if that's the situation. And then Yom Tov begins, now it's nighttime, you get up early in the morning while it's still night, and you go check it again and you find an egg. You know this egg was not born at night. Could not have been born at night because chickens don't lay eggs at night. And therefore, it could not have been born on Yom Tov because it couldn't have been born at night, and there was no Yom Tov that was not night yet. You got up early in the morning while it was still night outside and inside. So therefore, it must be that it was here before Yom Tov, and even though you checked and you didn't find it, you missed it. You missed the egg. Not a problem. Either that, or it was already laid majority during the day, and then it went back in, and that's why you couldn't find it, because it went back in. But, like Rav Yechanan, if you didn't see it, and it went back in, that's considered like it was born during the day, not at night, and therefore there is no issue, it's not usser, and you're allowed to eat it on Yom Tov. Now, this is a statement of Rav. The Gemara says that this does not fit with the statement of Rav Yossi ben Yisho, who says in the name of Rav, the opposite halacha. He says that if you do the same thing, you check and you don't find it in the morning, it's usher because you have to assume that it came from the chicken overnight. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? It can't come from the chicken overnight. We just said clearly in the Bryce that a chicken doesn't give a birth at night. The Gemara says, no, we're talking about a situation where it may have given birth not from a male. It's an unfertilized egg. Unfertilized egg could come out at night. The Bryce was only talking about a fertilized egg. The Gemara says, so then that's a kasha on the opinion we said earlier that says that you could definitely assume that it came from the that it was born before Yom Tov. Well, maybe it was an unfertilized egg. The Gemara says, no. Situation is where it was exposed to a male. It was exposed to a male. It could still have an unfertilized egg. It could still be safta dara. It could still be worn by the earth. The Gemara says, no. The rule is that a chicken that's exposed to a male will not have an unfertilized egg. Will not be worn by the earth, and therefore it could not come at night. The Gemara says, what is the shear? How far away could it be from the rooster and still never have an unfertilized safta dara egg? So the Gemara says pretty far, up to 60 houses away. Anywhere where it could hear the voice of the rooster during the day, where sound doesn't travel so much. 60 houses away is an incident that happened with Rav Murray and Paskin, that if there's a rooster within 60 houses, it could not give birth at night, and therefore you're allowed to assume that it was born before Yom Tov. Now, if there's a river between the rooster and the hen, then it does not help. If there's a bridge, then it could cross the bridge. If there's the thin plank with a rope, it's hard for it to get across. It won't cross the plank, but there was one incident that it did cross that plank. The Gemara now asks, if you're telling me that the case of Yossi ben Shaul was safna da'ara, the reason why you have to assume that the egg was laid at night, and therefore it was laid in Yom Tov and you're not allowed to eat it, is because it was a safna da'ara, which could be laid at night. So then why do you only say that if he checked when Yom Tov began and it wasn't there during the day? Even if he didn't check at all, it still could have been late at night. It could have been safna da'ara. It could have been late at any time. So what's your heter to assume that it was laid before, and if he didn't check? Somebody says, no, I could assume that maybe it was born during the day before, and it's only because I checked when Yom Tov began and there was no egg. That's why I have to assume that it was late at night. Otherwise, it could be safran da'ara and it was born at night, or it could be that it was born during the day and it was born out of Yom Tov. How do you know? So Gemara says, well, if it could have been born out of Yom Tov, you're willing to accept the possibility. So then, even if you did check, maybe you go like Rav Yochanan, and part of it came out during the day, and therefore it's not usher, even if you did check. So Gemara says, no, Rav Yochanan's lo shchiach, that it came out majority and went back in, that you can't rely on, unless you know it wasn't safran da'ara. If it wasn't safran da'ara, then there's no other way of possibly explaining this. So then we could say that it must have been a Rav Yochanan case. Otherwise, why that I wouldn't be able to rely on that? So the Gemara quotes one more statement of Rav Yossi ben Shaul: you should not leave a garlic that's cut or ground overnight, because the snakes like it and they'll take some of it, and therefore they'll leave their venom behind, and that'll cause you problems. Okay, that concludes the Gemara's discussion of the first machlokes in our Mishnah, which was about an egg born in Yom Tov. The Gemara now refers to the second machlokes in the Mishnah, which is machlokes Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. What is the minimum size of chametz? So Beis Hillel says chametz and sa'or. Sa'or is sour dough. That's what we call yeast. It's very heavily moldy with yeast, piece of dough. It's very sour. It's used to put into other doughs to make them rise. So Beis Hillel says both chametz and sa'or both have a shear of a concise, and Beis Shammai says no, sa'or has a smaller shear. Sa'or has a shear of a concise, and regular chametz has a shear of a koseves. Where it says, what's Beis Shammai's source? Beis Shammai's source is from the fact that the Torah has to tell us that both chametz and sa'or are aser. Why do you have to tell both of them? If chametz is aser, then sa'or is for sure aser. Sa'or is sourer. It is more fermented. It's greater chametz than regular chametz. So why do you have to mention it? Obviously, it's because it's a smaller size, and you're telling me chametz is aser even though it's less chametz, and sa'or is aser even. It's more chametz, but it's aser because with a smaller size, it's more chamer halachas. Now, Beis Hillel disagrees with that. Beis Hillel says you have to tell me both of them. You have to tell me chametz, which is less fermented, and you have to tell me sa'or because it's not even food. Nobody eats sa'or. That's why you have to tell me next to chiddush that sa'or also has an iser chametz. So the Gemara notes that Beis Shammai doesn't seem to fit with the statement of Rabbi Zeir. Rabbi Zeir notes that in the same pasuk, the Torah switches from sa'or to chametz. in its phraseology. It begins by saying Shivas Yamim Sarle must be Vatechem Ki Kol Ocha Machmetzes V'Nechasa. So it switches from Sar to Chametz. Seems to show that they're both the same, and whatever halachas apply to one apply to the other. If that's true, they should have the same halachos. How could Beis Shammai say that they have different shiurim, different sizes? So the Gemara says no. That pasuk is talking about eating. Eating, they have the same size. Beis Shammai is talking about destroying, that you can't keep it in your house. What is the minimum size you're not allowed to keep in your house? That's where Beis Shammai argues on Beis Hillel. The Gemara says their machlokes is about, do you derive the halachos of destroying from the halachos of eating? If you learn one from the other, that's Beis Hillel. They have the same size in eating, they have the same size for destroying. Beis Shammai says no, different halachos, different sizes. You don't learn one from the other. Gemara quotes a Beitzah that explicitly says this is what their machlokes is. This is what it's about. It's about how much you need to destroy, not about how much you're allowed to eat, you're not allowed to eat. Okay, that concludes the Gemara's discussion on this Machlokas. Now we go to the next Machlokas, which was about making dirt soft in order to use it to cover shchita of a bird or a chaya. The halacha is that a bird or a chaya, a wild animal that you shech, you have to cover the blood. You need to have dirt, soft, dug up dirt in order to be able to cover the blood. And the Mishnah quoted Machlokas between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. What should you do if you shech the yontif? Yontif, you're allowed to shech, but you're not allowed to dig. So the Gemara wants to know, are we talking about somebody who didn't shecht yet and he's coming to ask what should I do? Or are we talking about somebody who shechted already and now he needs to cover the blood, what should he do? So the Gemara knows there's a contradiction in the language of the Mishnah about this. It starts off by saying hashoichet, somebody who slaughtered. And he already slaughtered and he's coming to ask what should I do now? So on that, it seems to imply that if he would come and ask, we would tell him, you're not allowed to, if you don't have dirt prepared, you cannot slaughter at all. It's only when he comes and asks. The Gemara says, but if you look in the next phrase in the Mishnah, it says that Beis Hillel says, we tell the guy, don't shecht unless you have dirt prepared. Don't shecht. That means he didn't shecht yet. So what's going on? Did he already shecht or he didn't already shecht? So the Gemara says, no, what Beis Hillel means to say is, don't shecht unless you have dirt prepared. Don't shecht and cover it unless the dirt is prepared. Meaning Beis Shammai says you're allowed to dig up some dirt and cover the blood. Beis Hillel is saying you've shechted already, you're not allowed to dig up some dirt now. Don't shecht and cover. It's an expression. Don't shecht and cover. Don't go dig up the dirt. The Gemara says, however, not so fast. You can't get away with this. Telling me that the Mishnah is talking about somebody who shechted already, because the next phrase in the Mishnah specifically says that Beis Hillel agrees that if they shechted already, then he's allowed to dig. So obviously up to now we're talking about where somebody did not shecht yet. So how do we understand this with the first phrase in the Mishnah, which starts off hashoichet, somebody who shechted already? So the Gemara says this is what we mean to say. You're right. Really we're talking about somebody who did not shecht yet. He's coming to ask. Hashoichet doesn't mean one who shechted. Hashoichet means a slaughterer, a shoichet. A shoichet who comes and he wants to ask, what am I supposed to do? That's where we have a machlokes between Beis Hillel and Shammai. What are you supposed to do? Beis Shammai says you're allowed to shecht and dig and cover it. Beis Hillel says you can't unless you have earth and dirt prepared already. But Beis Hillel agrees that if he shechted and now he comes to ask, then he's allowed to cover it up. Now, in giving this answer, the Gemara quotes it slightly differently between Rabbah and Rav Yosef. Rabbah says, we tell him, first shecht, then dig a little dirt. According to Beis Shammai, that is, who says you're allowed to shecht and dig. We tell him, first shecht, then dig a little dirt. According to Rav Yosef, we say, first dig a little dirt, then go shecht. So Abaye says, interesting, there's a machlokes between Rabbah and Rav Yosef about this. And he said to Rav Yosef himself, he said, maybe your machlokes is about, do you have to put dirt under the blood? Of a statement of Rabbi Zeira that says that you have to put a sandwich. There has to be soft earth below the blood. You have to shecht and pour the blood into that. And then you have to put more soft dirt above it. And the reason is because it says v'kiseu be'ofar. You should cover it in dirt, not with dirt, but in dirt. You have to have, has to be in the dirt, has to be blood above and below. So it says Rav Yosef, no, that's not what our machlokes says. We both agree that that's true, and we both agree therefore that if you don't have some soft dirt already that you could shecht and pour the blood onto, you can't shecht. That's for sure the case. The question is, if you do not have dirt like that, should we stop you from shechting now? Or if you have dirt like that, we don't have additional dirt to cover, should we stop you from shechting? Rabbah says you're not allowed to shecht any further. You have to first shecht and then dig up the dirt. because we're afraid if you dig up the dirt first, you're going to end up not shechting at all. I say we'd rather make sure that you dig up the dirt first, so that you should be able to shecht. And the reason is because if we don't let you dig up the dirt in order to be able to shecht, you're going to end up not being able to shecht at all, and then because you're not going to want to dig up the dirt, and then you're not going to have meat for Yontif. You want everybody to have meat for Yontif, to be Mekayim, the halacha of Simchas Yontif. Okay, the Gemara now goes to the next phrase in the Mishnah, which says that everybody agrees that if he shechted already, he's allowed to dig up the dirt. Rav Zrika says, how could you dig up dirt? Digging up dirt is nisa d'oraisa. So what it means is that the spade, the shovel's already in the dirt, and therefore you just have to scoop it out. That's not an Isser D'oraisa. Gemara says, not an Isser D'oraisa. What do you mean? You're crumbling up clods of earth. That's an Isser Ketisha. So Gemara answers it was already soft, and therefore you don't have to crumble it up. So Gemara says, well, there's a different problem. You're digging a hole. Making a hole is an Isser D'oraisa. So Gemara says that's only where you're digging a hole because you want a hole. Here you're digging a hole, you want dirt. That's what's called machash and etzricha legufa. You're making the same hole but for different purpose, and therefore that's only an Isser D'oraisa.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.